Okay, so let's spend a few minutes talking about the craft of writing. Just in general, what do you like about writing?
I like when I think something is funny that the audience proves it to me, or they disproves it to me. So the audience is my judge. It's great.
Were you always drawn to writing comedy?
Hmm.
Did you ever want to do any other genre?
I did some, but it wasn't interesting to me.
So what was your process when you would write? Did you use note cards or a legal pad, or what did you do?
I would write longhand. So you have an idea of something you want to say or how you want to say it. So I would write if I had something to say in a funny way.
And how did your process change when you would work with other people?
Well, I worked with some of the very, very best people in comedy. Bob Einstein was great, and Chris was also very good, and Mason was very good. My partners were terrific.
So would you guys kind of throw around ideas first
Absolutely.
and then write things down?
Yeah.
Would you both write down, or would one person be the writer?
Sometimes it would be both guys. So I say something that I thought was funny, or Mason thought was funny, and Bob thought it was funny, and Bob would do something that would break me up. So I would write that down.
And did you have any preferences for like time of day you would want to write, or any kind of
No.
routines?
We would write up. We would write early in the morning and write late at night.
Did you ever have to deal with writer's block?
Yes,
And what did you do?
I would think till I would come up with an idea.
You just burst through it?
Absolutely. We didn't have the time. We had the time, not the time. But the specials, you had a little more time. But we were working 52 weeks of the year.
Yeah. What was the kind of a typical production schedule for these variety shows that you were on?
Well, Monday was a first read-through. I mean, first of all, we would write the script, the first draft of the script, 3 weeks before going into the studio. And then we would write how we would feel, and about a week before we go in the studio. And then we started to rewrite from Monday through Wednesday. Wednesday is a read-through, was a blocking, live blocking in the studio. And we go to Thursday, we pre-record, and we would do blocking and taping all day. And then we would do an audience taping, which was great. I mean, it would tell you, it was nerve-wracking because you'd have to find out, they would be your final judge.
So let's talk a little about that with respect to Andy Williams. You wrote for the Andy Williams show. So this was his 1969 show.
Yes.
He'd had a couple TV shows. What was your experience working on that 1969 show?
It was wonderful because he's a great singer. And we hit it off personally. You know, he would, I was a terrible golfer, but he'd call me because I'd bring 3 or 4 good jokes. And I played poorly, but we had fun.
You wrote on a number of his specials, too.
Yes.
Do you remember, how did you first meet him and get involved with him?
I wrote, he was guesting on our show, on the Smother show. So I wanted to come up with an idea for a way to have fun with him and his reputation. So he sang the song People, and we filled, people kept coming out in different country costumes. Ukrainians would come out with certain, and the Irish would come out with certain, Scots would come out, and we filled the studio with 350 people. So then we had to have him in the commercial. Everybody left the studio, and he they all were there. We came up on everybody that had come into the previous number standing there, and they leaning on each other in a friendly way. And then he started to sing Moon River, and people started to leave. And his wife came by, his wife at the time, Claudine, came by and she was walking out, said, "Andy, I love you very much, but I can't stand this anymore." And then the guy who wrote the song was Henry Mancini, and he came on and said, "Andy, I can't explain to you what you've done for me and for this song, but enough is enough." He walked out. And finally, at the end, everyone had left except Billy Barty was still there. He was a midget. And Billy Barty, he came to the last phrase, "Moon River." And Billy bit him on the leg, and he staggered out, and Billy took off his hat and said, "And me." And it was so wonderful, so funny, so pure. And Andy took it in the best of humor, and he was terrific. And he hired me to come and do his show.
Because you'd written that sketch?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It was important to him, and I did a lot of sketches for him. I used to play the voice of the bear.
Cookie Bear?
Yeah, Cookie Bear.
Yeah, tell us about Cookie Bear.
Well, we did the sketch, just a little blackout, and in which Andy looked. The bear came to rent a room for him. "You're a bear," he said. He said, "I'm not gonna rent a room for you. Not now, not ever, never." That was the whole point of that. And talking about, people just have dislikes for other people because of the way they look. And the bear could never rent a room from him. And it became a regular on the show. He used to get $5,000 letters a week across the country.
Requesting Cookie Bear?
Yep.
So how did it become you that did the voice of Cookie Bear?
Well, we had no one to do the voice. We tried a few people, and so I just did it. It was well, I'm going to do it once, so it wasn't expected to go on forever.
Did you have a hand in writing those sketches as well?
Yeah. And it was funny. And working with him was wonderful. And he was particularly good during the comedy. Yep. And so he used to you'd call him at Christmas time, and I'd pick up the phone, and he'd sing, "We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas," and I'd join in and sing with him. And then his brother would and he used to have the brothers for at the Christmas time. He always had the brothers on, and they were very funny, and they were good guys.
Yeah, those Christmas specials were quite popular.
Yeah.
Why do you think audiences enjoyed those so much?
Well, they were just music, and they were happy singing. He's such a good singer. I mean, he's a wonderful singer.
I mean, you said he was quite good at the comedy too. Talk a little bit about trying to find that right balance between the musical numbers and comedy sketches.
Well, it just seemed that in most cases, in my writing for people, I would just come up with simple ideas that seemed to be funny, and audiences would laugh.
What were some of his strengths, Andy, as a performer?
Well, first of all, he was a great singer. I mean, I was a fan of Sinatra's. Andy was every bit the singer that Sinatra was. A beautiful voice. And I was just so impressed with him.
Would he have a lot of input on what he wanted to do on the show?
Musically, absolutely. But comedy, he would leave that to us.
So he followed your lead?
Yep, and we did the same with Sonny and Cher.
Sonny and Cher, which started 1971.
Yep.
So how did you get involved with Sonny and Cher? This
Well,
is Comedy Hour.
We did the summer show, and that was so successful that we ended up doing a regular, another show started in December. It was great.
And this is you and Chris Beard?
Yes.
So did you come on, when you started, were you writers? Were you writer-producers?
Writers, producers.
Writer-producers. So were you involved in developing the format for the show?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that, because they had kind of a definite opening and closing and animation and.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that. In that, you just described the basic structure of the Sonny and Cher show, which was the structure of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. They did a monologue to begin with, based on a song, and Tom and Dick were pure at that because that's how they did their act, and so we used them and the basis of how they performed as the structure of the show.
So had you and Chris gone to see Sonny and Cher's act before the show?
Yes, we went to Dallas, and we were in a club that had more people on stage and in the audience. They had, but it was Fred Silverman that said, "Go and see them. I think there's something in there." And we saw them, and they were terrific. And on the way home, we got fairly stoned on the. It's terrible for me to mention this, but we wrote on the plane. We came up with the Vamps concept.
What was the Vamp for people who aren't familiar?
Vamps were women who were famous for doing certain things in life, and they were remarkable women. And Cher played all those women, and was very good at that. She was very, very good. She had dyslexia, so she had to memorize everything that she did, and she was able to ad lib inside of that, and it was very good.
What about Sonny? What were his strengths?
Sonny was very good at playing straight for her. He played very, very, very good straight man, and very good. He played straight man for Jerry Lewis, and he played straight man for a number of comedians. He played very well. He was very good.
So is that what their act was? Was he the straight man to her? So you guys just built off of that?
Absolutely.
You tell the story of when you and Chris met with Sonny and the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah, she reminds me.
I love it. Tell us.
So Sonny, we were talking to the, we like the character you play with Cher. You play very straight for her, and she has big jokes. And so he listened to that, and he said very, very honestly to us, "Well, guys, I'm willing to play the straight man, and if it works, I'll play it I'll work hard at it." He said, "But in me, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg." So I took him at heart, and we left. I said, "By the tip of the iceberg, that speech will stay with me forever." We worked the show, and he worked very well in the show, and we ran for 3 seasons. And now I'm doing another show. I was doing the Bizarre Show with John Biner, and we were in Vegas. And I said to, I came into my office in Vegas at 4 or 5 in the morning, and we've been working all night. And I checked my mail, and there was a telegram. And it takes you back before FaceTime. A telegram from Sonny. From Chris, yes. Not yet. From Sonny, the first telegram from Sonny said, "You're not going to believe this. I just got elected to Congress." I said to Chris, he came in the office, he wanted to check his mail too before going to sleep. I said, "Chris, you don't believe this. The tip of the iceberg just got elected to Congress." And it was the only guy in the world that could even recognize what I was talking to him about.
Oh, that's great. So going back just to, you guys had watched them perform in their act, got a little stoned, coming up with the ideas for the show.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you came up with Vamp. You knew that you wanted the opening monologue.
Yep, and the laundromat.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we just wanted to come up with the concept for a Yenta, who knows everything, and she played the part perfectly. She worked the wardrobe. She made herself have a big fat tush, and she she was very great. She did all the she did Laverne. Laverne was her name, and it was great.
And that was opposite Terry Garr,
Yep.
right?
Terry Garr. We worked with Terry through the Wendy Williams show too. She was very good, and then she started getting big movie parts. I haven't seen Terry for a number of years. I understand she's a little not well today.
Sorry to hear that. What about the use of animation on the show? At the
John Wilson was an animator, and we wanted to take that animation and lead in. We used to do on the Williams show. We did lead ins to commercials with little bits and pieces of what was coming up, and we wanted to do with animation. And John Wilson was an animator, and he did this stuff. He did the pilot for us for the summer show, and he was great.
So you were a writer-producer.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe your producing style, especially since you had a writing background?
Well, it was I was very kind to writers who were coming up with ideas. They were just, and I would work very hard. If someone has a good idea, but it didn't work itself out yet, I would work hard with them. We would work to make it work.
Did you hire writers on that show?
Yes. Can't remember all the writers I had. Hanan, Bob Arnott, Coslow Johnson.
What did you look for in a writer?
Inventiveness and you know, I would write things that came out of their careers and use that, especially with performers who had remarkable careers, and we would use their animated structures to make the concepts. We were good at that.
Bob and Steve were writing partners on
Yeah.
that show.
That was great, Bob and Steve.
Bob
and Steve Martin.
Einstein
Yeah.
and Steve Martin?
Yep. They were so inventive, so good. In fact, when they worked together, they were pretty good. But when I split them up, they were great. Each guy had great ideas. Great ideas.
Allan, she was asking about your style as a producer. You mentioned about because of your musical background, he ran all the recording sessions, organized all the singing and stuff. So that was a big part of your style.
You know, Rita remembers this part of my stuff.
Well, talk a little bit about that, because there was a structure to the music on Sonny and Cher as well.
Well, we found that they had Cher used to do in the middle of the show. She would do a standard piece, and the wardrobe was very unique. And I honestly feel that the ladies in the audience used to love her more than the guys. So we would get mail from the women saying how great she looks. The gowns are great. The skin is great. When I see Cher today, I'm amazed. She's 73 years old. She looks like a kid, and she had a very special talent for being loved. She was great.
Also, your talent in the architectural field helped create the visual look of the show.
True. I forget that. There's such a my life is so. You know, with the globes of the Sonny and Cher. That was the whole opening for our sequence for our show on the Good Nights. And they worked perfectly. I
So-
have one here somewhere.
In the garage.
So you were involved in the kind of the set design aspect as well? Did that architectural background come in handy on a lot of sets
A lot of
in
time,
that
yeah.
way?
Yeah.
Were there other shows that you contributed to the sets?
Not a lot. but we always hired designers who had very comedic aspect to their thinking.
There were a couple other well-known sketches from that, including Sonny's Pizza.
Yeah,
Was that one you developed on the plane as well?
and that was in the second or third year. Very good.
And the fortune teller.
Oh, that was in the first year, and ran through it. Cher's a fortune teller. Perfect.
So she would kind of dispense
Absolutely.
insulting,
Yeah.
not great things at
Right.
Sonny.
And the glamour aspect of Cher was based on your work with Juliet in Canada.
That was a Canadian performer. She met her, and I used to talk to the wardrobe people that she needs a special gown for some inside. It was only a half-hour show. She needs a gown to appeal to the women viewers, and she was spectacular. She was a good singer, and the show is very popular. Used to come on after hockey night in Canada.
It's a good time slot.
Yeah, it's a great time slot.
So then, you would talk with Bob Mackey then on
No, Bob, this was these
was
are
this Rhett?
Canadians.
That was the inspiration.
right. So on Cher, you would talk with wardrobe about.
I would talk to them, but they're much better than I was. Every so often, Rhett,
Turner.
Rhett Turner.
who is just a dear person in life, and would call me to come up to the booth and say to me, what do you think of this gown? I said, you're asking me what I think of this gown? I who have the worst taste in the world? And he'd say, I'm sorry, I've lost my mind. But I knew that if I liked something, he'd go for it.
So talk about working with the different guest stars. Would people come in with an idea of what they wanted to do, or be mostly receptive to your ideas and the writer's ideas?
Mostly receptive. They would come on our show because they knew they were going to get serviced by the staff, and so Bob Hope came on, and he was open to us, no matter what we came up with. All those guys would come on.
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis was always open to us.
Do you remember what you did with Jerry on the show?
We had him play all 7 dwarfs, and that's a quick change. We'll walk out one door, we'll walk in the other door, and he complete change. There's no editing in that.
I think you had Ronald Reagan on when he was
Oh,
governor
yes.
as well.
Yes, and he wouldn't accept the Bonham Award. Sonny wanted to give him the Bonham Award. He says, no.
And I think he read a dedication speech for something else he was supposed to do, because
Yes.
Sonny pushed him to read a speech.
Yes, he was good. He was still young,
And he had an acting background too, so.
and I was surprised by him because he was a very decent guy. I totally disagreed with him politically, but he was a very decent man.
So why did the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour come to an end?
Well, Sonny and Cher were especially, I don't want to get into the details of it, but Cher was right to be displeased with Sonny. And so when we knew that this was going to end, and I was asked a number of times to do a different Sonny and Cher show. And I said, I didn't want to. I did a Sonny and Cher show. It was remarkable, unique, and whoever going to do it, the other show is just going to be for a couple of years.
So you were asked to do the Sonny and Cher show
Yes.
when they reunited
Yes.
years later?
Yep.
And turned it down?
Yep.
You did work on Sonny's solo show, right?
Yes.
The Sonny Comedy Review?
Because that's foolish. We did something because the show was going off, and they wanted a replacement show. They wanted Sonny to do it, and it was foolish of us to do it
Why was that?
because he didn't have, he didn't have the foils to work with, and he was not very good on his own.
What do you think the legacy of the original show, the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, is?
It was the legacy of it that it's a family show by a husband and wife and parents who love their child and who convinced the audience that they were legitimate.
And it was kind of a family show.
Absolutely.
They brought their own child onto the set, too.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to That's My Mama,
Yes.
which you were an executive producer
Yeah.
on. Now, were you with the show from the very beginning?
Well, they had had an idea of a show, and they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to structure it, and so we took the show that they had described the show, and we taped scenes, and we put together a little kind of a mini pilot, and we sold it to I think it was ABC. And Clifton was great in the show. Clifton Davis was very good in the show.
And what was the show about?
It was about a guy who's working in his dad's barbershop. He's a young man, and the dad passes away. And mother wants him to keep working at that. He wants to go to school. So, and it was tearing him apart. And it was a very good idea, very neat idea. And eventually we were going to get him to get into politics and things like that. But it ran for 3 seasons. And it did very, nicely, but we didn't have the knowledge to keep developing it.
So this was a sitcom,
Yeah.
right? Now, had you worked on a sitcom
No.
before? What was that experience like for you?
It was great. It was easy to get, as long as you had 2 or 3 truly funny people, and we would build on their funniness.
What about kind of the writing structure of it? Was that easy for you to
Well,
pick up?
it was easier. It was easy for me. Bob is a great comedy writer, but he's more of a sketch writer. But I was able to structure a storyline.
This is Bob
Einstein.
Einstein. So you guys executive produced this
Yes.
together? Were you guys producing partners at that time?
Yes. No, we were not producing partners yet, because that happened pretty early but we became producing partners just after that.
Okay. So this was, you said you kind of maybe were hoping to get more into politics on the show, but didn't?
We never got to that point.
Was that because of the network, or it just didn't go
Well,
there?
it just didn't go anywhere. We were too busy. We were trying to do other shows at the same time.
So did you hire writers for this show as
We
well?
did.
So this was a show about an African American family. Were
Yeah.
there African American writers on the show as well?
We had 1 or 2, not very many.
Was there much of a push at that time for diversity in writer?
Well, not
writer
really,
films?
but we wanted to have 1 or 2 writers. We had different writers write the scripts. We had different writers. We didn't have a staff writing scripts.
And were you involved at all? I had read somewhere that you were involved with the title song for That's My Mama?
Yes.
What was your involvement?
Well, it was just instrumental.
So you wrote the music for it?
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about that, like using your composing background in shows that you were working on.
Well, I used more as we got along in different things. And I wrote some serious songs that were nice.
So were you involved with a lot of the music side of things like Sonny and Cher and Andy Williams
Yes.
in composing for music as well?
No, I didn't do any original stuff for everybody, but I did special material.
Special material. Okay. So let's talk now about Van Dyke and Company, 1976. So this is Dick Van Dyke's variety show.
Yep.
How did you get involved with that?
Well, we got hired to do a pilot, a special, and it was very, very well reviewed, and then they asked us to do the series.
And this is you and Bob Einstein
Yes.
again? Okay. So talk about expanding it into a season-long variety show.
He's such a good, very good performer. that we whatever we gave him, he did well. And he's 93 years old now. I can't believe it. God, he's incredible.
And I think Andy Kaufman was a.
Yep. We had Andy on before Saturday Night Live did, and we had him on, and we introduced him as the guy, a local guy that just got up and did some comedy, and he did the comedy in a foreign accent. It was very funny, very funny.
Talk a little bit about some of the guest stars that you had on that show too.
We had John Denver on. We had. I can't. So my brain has left me.
Freddie Prinze.
Freddie Prinze was on, yes, and the singer from the mom and dad
Mama's and
and
the
two
Papas?
brothers
Mom, Dad, and two.
in the family did. No, the husbands as well. The
Nelsons?
yes, Ricky Nelson. He was very good.
Fantastic.
We had a lot of people on.
And that show actually won the Emmy for Outstanding
Yeah.
Comedy Variety Show too.
Yep,
Was that after it was off the air as well, or was it still on the air?
it's still on the air.
Very nice. And did you attend that
He
ceremony?
did.
What do you recall? This was 1977.
Yep.
What do you recall about the 1977 Emmys?
I recall that Bob made a big speech, and I had nothing to say, so I stood next to him and said, "Thank you."
Got the point across?
Yeah.
And then you and Bob went on to work on the Red Fox Comedy Hour.
Yes.
So tell us about that one.
Well, that was supposed to be a 5 or 6 week job. We ended up doing 16 and 19 shows, and I didn't expect it and want it. So it would just be a fill-in, and it was an interesting show. It wasn't great, but it was interesting.
So Red Fox had just come off of Sanford and Son at
Yes.
that point, right?
Yes.
So were you at all afraid people were going to see him as Sanford still? Or?
No. Red was definitely Red Fox in this, but it just went on too long for we were told you don't have to be on this very long. We did 16 18 shows. It was for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So this is 1977.
Yes.
So were you and Bob Einstein official kind of producing partners at this point?
Yes.
Okay. How did you guys decide to become producing partners?
Well, I just knew he was a very good writer, and I liked him. I used him every show that I ever did. I used Steve at that time on every show he did. He was a brilliant writer, great writer.
So you first met them both on Smothers Brothers?
Yes.
So what do you think their particular talents were? I guess in writing in particular.
Their comedy is uniquely original. It's not like anything else. Especially Steve was so brilliant. Bob was brilliant at a different level.
Just to keep going with Red Fox, sometimes his comedy was known for being a little
Oh yeah.
raunchy or
He would do warm-ups. His warm-ups were incredible.
yeah.
Ay vey.
So we're talking a little bit about Red's comedy. Was there ever any censorship problem on that show?
I mean, the warm-ups were so incredibly filthy. I can't even say what he did in the warm-ups because I'm too embarrassed to say that in front of you. So.
Can you even tell the story about when he had to go back to his dressing room?
Red was late to get to the set, and we knew he was in the dressing room. So I walk into the dressing room, and Bob walks in behind me, and I just try and stop Bob, who was about 6'4", 250 pounds. He wants to get into the sea, and Red is there, and he's got a girl under his, whatever he is dressed in, and he says, "Can a man..."
Get some privacy.
Yeah, can a man get some privacy? So he was an amazing guy. his warm-ups were beyond legend. And people in the audience women would just have a heart attack.
Did the network ever get involved?
No, because we never used him that way in the script ever.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want close to that.
And then, so you said you did about 16, 19 episodes?
Yeah.
And then it didn't last beyond that?
No, thank goodness.
So let's move on to a show that you and Bob Einstein created called Bizarre.
Yes.
And that wound up airing in Canada and on Showtime here in the
Yes.
US. So tell us how that all went down.
Well, we had a deal that I could get in Canada because they like their work. So I said we would do it as a Canadian production if Showtime were to buy that, and because we can sell it very cheap. So we went to Showtime and they bought it. So now we had two licensors, and the show was very funny. There's another very gifted guy, John Biner, is great.
So he was the host?
Yes,
This is another comedy variety?
absolutely great.
Okay.
And he's like Dick Van Dyke. He's a very, very broad performer.
Now, I read the original pilot was done with Richard Dawson?
Yes, and it was good. It was very good. The material was great, but we originally wanted to get someone like John Biner because we got a guy who was steeped in comedy.
And so did it shoot in Canada?
Yes,
or
it
did
did.
shoot? It shot in Canada.
Hmm?
Okay. And on that show, Super Dave Osborne kind of
Yes,
blew up.
we used Super Dave in one of the Red Fox shows, and
Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke even before that, and we knew that we would like to do this character again, and it was terrific. Bob was very good at it.
Do you remember what the inspiration for that character was when you did it
Well,
on Van Dyke?
there was the true evil Knievel character. In his documentaries, he shows how many bones have been broken in his body, how many times and in which way, and how this rib was repaired. And we figured this guy is a great source of comedy.
So it was a creation of you and Bob
Yes,
together?
Yes.
Was Bob always going to play Super Dave?
No, he'd been saying, no, I want to have another guy do it. And I said, I don't think I can do it. Not the way I can envision it. You have the attitude for it. It's perfect. You're a big guy, and people are going to enjoy you getting messed up. And he was right.
So would you guys script everything that he said, or was it ad-libbed?
No, it was earlier on. It was scripted, but as they went along, it was ad-libbed.
And so talk about kind of creating that persona with the costume and everything.
Well, we knew that this is a very, you used to say that I'm going to have the joke justice system come and get me and arrest me because you're doing the same joke, variation on the same joke forever and ever, over and over. And it worked every time. So we did it for 5 years. It's great.
Yeah, so off of, I guess, was it the popularity of the character on Bizarre that then led to getting the own show for Super Dave?
Yeah, then we finished, Bizarre was done with, and I went to the CTV network people and said, we would like to do a show with Super Dave character, and we have control over that character. He won't cost us that much, and it'll be do a good show for it, and we sold it.
So that was, 1987
Yeah.
that Super Dave started? So talk about launching that character into his own show and how you guys came up with the format for the show. Because it was kind of a talk show format, right?
Well, not really. It was a variety show format, and we used to. It was based on doing a particular stunt. He would get pulverized. Sometimes trying to prepare for this stunt. Sometimes during the performance of the stunt, or whatever. And so the difficulty was finding those ways of getting him mauled, and it was funny. One time, we had one of those big tractor things doing about 40 miles an hour, and it was going close to him. He was in a little mini car, like a Morris Minor, and the big tractor came and went right over where he sat, and I thought he was mauled. I ran out to the set, and I realized that he was just missed. They just missed him on the right side. It crushed his car, and the whole right side of his car. And I came. I said, "Jesus Christ, are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine. What are you doing here? Where we're taping you." He said, "You almost got killed a minute ago." Oh. That was the nature of the stunts. I said, we're going to have to stop doing these.
What was your budget like on that show?
We had about $400,000 a show.
And how many stunt performers did you use?
How many set performers?
Were there stunt performers, on the show?
We had some people, but we used to dummy. We used to match them pretty good.
So how did you guys come up with these ideas for the different ways to injure him?
Well, it was just, it's just a comedy idea. We have a way of making it work. We just had to do, each one of us would come up with some ideas, and we'd make them work.
And were you surprised at all by how popular that character became?
No, because we knew that he had been very popular. We knew that he was had a chance of making it, and he was very popular. We did the Tonight Show, and with Johnny Carson, we did many shows. Great with those pieces.
Were you there with him on those performances?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about being on the Tonight Show.
I used to say to Johnny, "Gee, I can't thank you enough. You've been so good to us." He said, "I have been good to you because he's very funny." And that's all I can tell you.
So were there prompts like that you would talk about in advance that, like Johnny would ask him certain questions?
Oh yeah. You would say, you have a piece of tape on you and your stunt that you're preparing about a month ago, and you didn't go through with it because this happened, and so we would show that.
That's great. So would people call Bob Dave, like when he was out and about?
Yes.
And what was his response to that? Did
He would just take he used to, in fact, he'd make reservations at restaurants on the Super Dave Hauser.
He was also in a Nike commercial.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Were you guys involved with the commercial?
Yes.
Did you help come up with the premise or the dialogue?
Yep, and we did another thing for, car commercial. Yeah, there was for the car, the big, Cerritos car, whatever. But we did a lot of commercials.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to mention how was it Bizarre or Super Dave that was the first comedy show for Showtime?
Yeah. Bizarre was first.
Bizarre, yeah.
Bizarre.
Was that through Lorraine?
No. Yes. Lorraine Arbus.
Bizarre was the first
Yep.
comedy show on Showtime,
Yep.
and you worked with Lorraine Arbus on that?
Yep.
Talk a little bit about working with her.
Well, she was wonderful. She had seen this, our pilot, and she said, "I'd like to buy that." That's how we got that CTV sale done.
And this is the really early days of cable. This is
Very early days.
early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what was the landscape like at that time?
About the Cable Ace Award.
We were nominated for an ACE Award, and we sat very near the front, so we expected to win something.
Big point if you go.
Yeah, we went in and they said there's no winner in this category. Absolutely no winner. There were 4 or 5 nominated, but none of them won. So we were relegated to being sitting there at that place, having taken those.
So they needed a majority winner, and
nobody won.
Nobody won.
Decided nobody deserved.
No one deserved to win that award. All right. There was also, talk about using a laugh track on the series. Do you have any recollections of how you guys used a laugh track or laugh machine on the show?
Well, the Laugh Machine was, we used the real audience to play them the stunts that we did. So and they were great laughs.
Excellent. And then there was also Super Dave Daredevil for Hire, which was an animated version. So how did the character translate to animation?
Well, it was pretty good, but I would have liked a lot more interesting animation. It was kind of old-fashioned. When you were doing such an outrageous show, you could use a little more of a unique approach to the animation.
So would you and Bob would you write the scripts, or you were producing?
Yep.
All of it?
It was I think we had 13 shows.
Excellent. And then you guys continued to do specials with Super Dave up through 2009.
Yes.
I think. Talk about the longevity of that character and still today.
Well, it was amazing because the people loved that character getting mauled. And, we couldn't, no one could believe he was really getting clobbered that way, but they loved the idea.
What do you think Bob in particular brought to that character?
Well, he brought such a unique attitude to the character itself. He was great. He was the funniest friend I ever had, ever.
Unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year.
Yes.
What do you think his legacy in entertainment is?
Great comedy taste, funny, great, brilliant people. So I've had the good fortune of having had partners who are great talent and good people.
Lovely. So we just have a few summing up questions now. How do you think television has changed since you first started?
Well, I don't really know because so much of that, the interim years were the real truth of people, real people playing themselves. And, and it has nothing to do with us. And so now that I'm enjoying the television coming back to creative process.
What kind of television do you watch these days?
I watch mostly sports events, and I enjoy broad comedy, such as I can't even remember the titles. This is amazing that I'm speaking this long because I'm as a result of a couple of strange incidents in my life, I can barely talk today.
Well, you're doing great. We're getting a lot of good stuff here. And we're nearing the end, so a few more questions. We talked a little earlier about Fred Rogers possibly being a mentor. Were there other people that you worked with that you thought of as mentors throughout your career?
Some of the older writers were like Frank Pepiot and John Ellsworth. They're both Canadian writers who were very successful in this country. Ernie Chambers was a very good writer and a mentor for me.
Did they kind of give you personal notes about
Yes.
things and help guide you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They helped guide me from the point of view of comedic content.
Mm-hmm. So we at the Television Academy have been conducting these interviews for over 20 years now. What do you think is the value of preserving these personal behind-the-scenes stories of television?
Because people in this business who are so creative in the business that they expand out of themselves, they're very important to us all.
Absolutely. What advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
Never give up.
Mm-hmm.
If you have faith in yourself, follow through on that, no matter what happens.
What about to an aspiring producer?
The same.
Same. Did anyone ever give you a really great piece of advice? Does anything stick in your mind about?
No, it's just the general attitudes. I mentioned Frank and John and Ernie, and they just have such a complete faith in themselves that you need to follow through on that.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement?
Truly, I'm going to tell you that it's not going to be any of this two things to do with show business. My greatest achievement has been in the cantorial world.
Tell us about that.
It's I did that from childhood on, and I've come from a religious family, and I was as good a cantor as most very, very good cantors, and I was very grateful for that, the chance to do that.
What do you enjoy about being a cantor? Why is it so special to you?
Because it inspires the faith in me, because I didn't realize that I had so much faith.
What do you think it is about music that in particular that could kind of bond people and bring that out?
I don't know. The harmonic structure of the notes you sing or hear, but it's the thing I'm most proud of.
What about your high holidays about music?
Hmm?
Your high holiday services that you did specially with just based on music?
Well, I do very complicated high holiday services, mostly in a Hasidic and religious, Orthodox religious manner. So they're very important to me. I don't have the time and the patience or the talent to do them today.
How would you feel, though, singing in front of a congregation? What is that experience like for you?
I just did it a couple of weeks ago with a very dear friend of mine died, and they were thinking about how they get. It's very expensive to have a synagogue funeral service. So I said, I'll do it for you, and it was really lovely. My friend, I could literally hear my friend. My friend was an opera singer, quite a successful opera singer. I could just hear his gratitude.
That's lovely. Do you have any career regrets? Anything you'd do differently?
No.
And then our last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
Remembered as a good guy, fun to work for, with, and look forward to working with more people in my life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today, Allan.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.